All right, Resha, starting, of course, with what is happening in West Asia. Israel's war cabinet, it has decided to hit back forcefully against Iran for its missile and drone attack on Saturday night.
Right. Netanyahu summoned his war cabinet for the second time in less than 24 hours.
Now, Israel's military chief had said that his country will respond to Iran's weekend attack, but he did not elaborate on when and how.
We are closely assessing the situation. We remain at our highest level of readiness. Iran will face the consequences for its actions. We will choose our response accordingly. The IDF remains ready to counter any threat from Iran and its terror proxies as we continue our mission to defend the State of Israel.
The Israeli military released more footage claiming to show the damage which one of its air bases suffered in Iran's largely thwarted weekend aerial attack.
Israeli officials have said that the repairs at the base are ongoing and that the site remains operational.
Now, Israel remained on a high alert, but authorities and officials lifted some emergency measures that had included a ban on some school activities and limits on large gatherings.
The White House has also said that Iran did not provide warnings to the United States last week about its time frame for launching an attack on Israel or its potential targets.
I've seen reporting that the Iranians meant to fail, that this spectacular and embarrassing failure was all by design. I've also seen Iran say that they provided early warning to help Israel prepare its defenses and limit any potential damage. All of this is categorically false. To coin a phrase from the president, or steal a phrase from the president, it's malarkey.
Earlier, Turkish, Jordanian and Iraqi officials said that Iran did give wide notice days before its drone and missile attack on Israel. And now, the head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has warned that Iran would respond to future Israeli attacks on Iran-linked targets.
Meanwhile, the United Nations nuclear watchdog chief said that he is concerned about possible Israeli targeting of Iranian nuclear facilities.
Are you concerned that some of the targets might be nuclear facilities in Iran, especially that IAEA inspectors are on the ground? If you still and if you can confirm that, actually.
Well, of course, we are always concerned about this possibility. What I can tell you is that our inspectors in Iran were informed by the Iranian government that on the yesterday, all the nuclear facilities that we are inspecting every day would remain closed on security considerations. They would be reopened today for the continued inspections.
Now, the IAEA regularly inspects Iran's main nuclear facilities like its enrichment plants at Natanz that are at the heart of the country's nuclear program.
Now, of course, Resha, there's lots to unpack here, and to discuss this further, we're now being joined live on this bulletin with John Erit, Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, I want to start by asking you, as you of course know by now, Israel is planning out its response to the Iranian strikes on its soil. Now, this at a time when there are growing calls for there to be peace in the region and immediate de-escalation and cessation of hostilities. What sort of a response can we actually expect from Israel?
I think Israel is probably considering a range of responses, likely attacks on Iranian military facilities or possibly Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah. But it's really going to be up to the Israeli government to decide what is the appropriate response, or if any response is needed at this point. Given the spectacular failure of the Iranian attacks on Israel, there's a case to be made that Israel should just declare that it has won and stop the cycle of escalation right here.
Right, the United States made it clear that the fact that the Iranian attack was largely thwarted was a response enough. So do you think an Israeli response now could perhaps jeopardize support from allies for Israel?
It, of course, would depend on the nature of the Israeli response. The responses that caused civilian casualties that would seem disproportional, that would certainly jeopardize Allied support for Israel. A small-scale strike on a military facility likely would not have that same kind of impact.
Right, sir. Now, that being said, and of course we've touched on this, but just for more clarity here, many analysts expected that this really could be the time that Israel pivots from its current strategy, and that is to hit back and come out with a strong response. But at a time when Iran has categorically said that their response, if there is any retaliation from the United States or Israel, there would be a more severe response. So does this threaten a wider regional conflict?
If we get into a cycle where each side tries to respond more severely, stronger than the other, then that is a cycle of escalation, and that would, of course, threaten a wider conflict. The opportunity, of course, is there for one side or the other to cut off this cycle and to go back to a more peaceful way of getting along. But it's not clear that that is going to happen.
Right, Ms. Erit, we'll wait and have to see the response from Israel's side or by the attack on Iran. But thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION.
You're very welcome.
While Israeli leaders have hinted at retaliation, the government is under heavy international pressure not to further escalate the conflict.
And this is exactly what we were discussing right now as well. The Biden administration has been the most vocal in asking Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to exercise restraint at this point.
Right. Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder said that the U.S. does not seek an escalation with Iran.
This is after the U.S. supported Israel in shooting down dozens of missiles and drones launched by Iran on Saturday.
Certainly, when it comes to any type of Israeli response, and again, I'm not going to speak for the Israelis, that is a decision for them to make in terms of what they do, if they do it, and how they do it. But again, from a U.S. standpoint, we continue to make very clear that we don't seek a wider regional war, and we'll continue to work towards that result.
Now, Ryder also noted that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, spoke to his Israeli counterpart 3 times over the course of the weekend.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani called for restraint in West Asia. Sudani led a delegation that met officials across Washington, including Biden and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
On the other hand, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said that all sides must show restraint to avoid a rising spiral of violence in West Asia. While
French President Emmanuel Macron said that Paris will try to convince Israel that they must not respond by escalating.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian held phone talks regarding the tensions between Israel and Iran as well.
Amir Abdullahian said Iran is willing to exercise restraint and has no intention of further escalating the situation. Meanwhile, Wang said that China is willing to stay in communication with Iran and jointly promote a comprehensive, just and lasting settlement of Palestine.
The United States is pursuing a deal that would allow for a ceasefire lasting at least 6 weeks and allow more aid into Gaza.
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that Israel has moved in a significant way, but Hamas is the barrier to a deal that would see fighting in Gaza paused and hostages released.
Hamas needs to take that deal, and they need to explain to the world and to the Palestinian people why they aren't taking it, because it is Hamas right now that is the barrier and the obstacle to a ceasefire in Gaza.
Now, this comes as pro-Palestinian activists protesting the war in Gaza shut down the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. California traffic on the 6-lane suspension bridge. It came to a standstill as several protesters chained themselves to parked vehicles. About 20 people were arrested and taken into custody.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Take a look.
President Biden welcomed Iraqi Prime Minister al-Sudani to the White House, acknowledging the sensitive timing of this visit amidst recent events in the Middle East. President Biden said that he wants to prevent the Middle East conflict from spreading, but also vowed to defend Israel after Iran launched an unprecedented aerial attack on the key U.S. ally. The meeting took place as the world watches to see how Israel will respond to that Iranian attack. The timing and nature of the response will depend on various factors, including political pressure from the Israeli public and the U.S. government's stance. Biden's critics argue that Israel should respond in a way that reestablishes deterrence by punishment rather than just denying Iranians the ability to harm civilians, as the Biden administration seems to be advocating for, at least until now. What seems to be clear is that discussions regarding the complexities and challenges of dealing with Iran's behavior and the need for a robust response to deter further aggression has only just begun. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.